Sup, nerds?
I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Aaron.
We're Neverboard Gaming.
And today we're taking...
We didn't decide who was going to finish, though.
We're Neverboard Gaming, and today we're taking a look at the Order and Chaos expansion for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Since this is just a review of the expansion, if you want to hear our thoughts on Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, you should probably start there. You can click the card or the link down below. Go watch that video first, and then watch this one so you know what we're talking about.
Obviously, the main thing that Order and Chaos gives you is it gives you 4 new factions, but primarily with those factions, you get the ability to now play to 5 and 6 players. It also has a board extender in there. And I gotta say, I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I would recommend this expansion is because playing with 5 and 6 players is absolute chaos.
It is, and honestly, I would even go for having the 4 extra factions and the more variability just brings so much order to your... No, that didn't work. But having that variability and all those other factions helps you variability, and even if you do just have 4 players, don't not buy this because, oh, we're never going to play 5, 6 players.
Having variability helps with variability.
It does.
It does.
The first time we actually got to play a full 6-player game was at Gen Con of 2017, and we got to play with the first production copy off the line with Scott. Scott Holmes, the designer, and Michael from Gambling Games, and Roy from...
Something.
Who's
He's
Roy?
from something.
I don't know.
Gaming Night, Epic, Tiny... 6 players was awesome, and it was a lot of fun. Like you said, it's a lot of chaos brought to the table, because now you're completely surrounded. There's 5 people that are trying to kill you.
So far, I've actually been able to play it at every single... Except for 2 players, I've been able to play it at every single pair count. 6, 5, 4, and 3. Yep, that's all the ones except 2. But then you guys actually got to play it at 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, from my experience, I would say that this game is like the more the merrier.
And a game this epic, you don't want it to be tiny at all.
Shut up.
But really, those bigger games in a game this epic and grandiose in the table, like just having those 2 extra players just gives it that much more pizzazz.
The only negative to that is this game has a problem with being a table hog already. Once you so the player mat that we have that you can you can get it on their website or was it Kickstarter?
Probably.
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably
There's a Kickstarter right now.
You can
Get it
probably
there.
get it. Oh yeah, that's right. At the time of this recording, there's already a Kickstarter going on, but the player mat is literally the size of this table. It is almost exactly inch for inch on this exact. So I was like, oh, we couldn't play on this table if we wanted to, unless we had all of our player things off on little side tables. So it's a table hog already. This is just, with 4 players. But imagine adding 50% more to that board and then other things on the edge. So that is one thing to keep in mind. So enough about player count. Let's talk about factions. I'll do that again. Obviously, you get 4 different ones. You get the Goblins, the Undead, pretty reasonable. You also get Lizard Folk and Lion King.
Lion King.
The Lion King! You open the box and it's like...
The Lion King is actually a really interesting one because they want to be in the desert. They get extra movement when one of their towers or one of their buildings is built and they're at level 3. And the casting of spells, you actually get resources back after spending the magic to do it. You can get other resources based on the victory points. There's lots of interesting things going on with them.
Then the Lizardkin, it's all about you can use your bread as mana when you're casting spells, and if you have swamps, they can be whatever resource you want them to be. You can get resources from them, and then however many swamps you have make spells even cheaper. So they're a lot about getting different resources for different things and then casting spells for super cheap.
The Goblins are the ones that I think actually kind of make the most sense to me lore-wise, because they're all just about flooding the board with a lot of dudes. You get bonus points if you have the most dudes. You get bonus points in battle if you have a lot of dudes. So actually, there's a mercenary, and we'll talk more about mercenaries in detail in another video, but it was the Minotaur who, if he's defending within one continent, he can jump around to any battle he needs to be in to help defend, which is really good because these guys, while you do get a lot of points and incentives for having a lot of dudes, it's a lot of dudes defensively. I noticed a lot of these bonuses are a bit more defensive and not attacky, so you want to just cover up your whole aisle and just sit there and turtle, and then that dude just jumps around and helps out. It's a pretty tight... Yeah, if you're playing with mercenaries, which I recommend, and I recommend you check out our video on that, but it's a pretty cool... You can get some pretty cool combos out of that.
The last game we played, I actually played as the Undead, and I thought they were really interesting. And one thing I kind of noticed with most of them, except for the goblins of the factions in the Order and Chaos, is they're really reliant on spells, because I had a lot of like kind of spell things that I was doing as the undead as well. Like I would try and collect as much mana as I could, and I could use that after I killed an enemy, and I could like take their soul, reap their soul, and put their soul on the board as like it's the underworld, and it could give me an attack bonus if they're warriors, or it just gave me like a spawn point if later on for a recruit action I could just spawn a guy there. So there's definitely a lot of incentive to like go around killing, because like everything about the undead is about killing and like taking away resources and stuff too. Because I had like the Reaper, or wasn't the Reaper, the Wraith. If he's wherever he is, all adjacent territories get one less resource until he's like maxed out. Then they get no resources. So you can just like send him to like really mess with people and really just like bring death to the entire map kind of thing.
I definitely think the Undead faction is my favorite in this expansion, just because they have that like one next level of stuff they do. It's not just new abilities, but now they have a new, like, the Reaping the Souls is a new card you have, and you get new tokens. And I really like it when factions like have that much of a difference. And that's like kind of a critique I would have for it, is I almost wish that more of the different factions had something like that. And I'm sure it balances. I'm sure if like you go and compare that to another faction's ability, it's not like they have a huge advantage because they have these abilities like Red Dragon Inn. If you play the ones without a second deck, you're kind of at a disadvantage. But I think that just, it makes it feel more unique, and that you actually have a different faction. So it's definitely, I think that's the coolest thing about this expansion.
I do agree with like that idea. I do think that when you have your faction, not just like, let's alter the abilities, alter the numbers, alter the stuff, let's add a second thing over here, an additional resource in a sense, right, that you're kind of working with. I agree with that. I usually think that's the best. But because they're so aggressive, because they're so incentivized to go attack, like you were just saying, I actually kind of like the Goblins the best because they just turtle so much. And it's also because like I played them at Gen Con, and I did a terrible job because I wasn't focusing on them. I think I even mentioned this in our other review for the base game, but I like got a spell that said like, ooh, this one, if you have one guy attack alone, he's at like +4. I'm like, that's pretty good. I'm going to use that a lot. But that's not what this is supposed, that's not what this, so I really kind of screwed the pooch on that one. But I was like reading the abilities, was like, oh, I probably should have focused on these a little bit more. And then playing them again, I'm like, yeah, I think this is, if you're like me, if you want to just kind of turtle and get points and, by buying a bunch of stuff, then you're going to like the Goblins.
Which in turn, then, it's the whole thing with this game is you really need to have a firm understanding of what your faction's kind of suggested goal is. Like, every faction has, like, if you look into it, like, oh, this is kind of the strategy you should take with this faction, you should also know your opponent so that you know the Goblins are going to turtle. If the Minotaur is available, don't let them have that, because that's going to help them turtle. And then if you notice them start turtling, you need to go attack them. Like, don't go attack someone else unless they have a similar ability. But like, if you're playing as an aggressive person, you know that's your target because they're going to trigger endgame with all their dudes, and then they're going to get their bonus points because they have all their dudes. And it's know your enemy.
And kind of the best way to tailor your end game like goal is to kind of know your heroes as well, because the heroes, they all move like slightly faster and slower. They have more strength than your warriors, and they each have 3 unique abilities as you level up your capital. So you definitely need to know them so you can help use them for your strategy. And then you before you can even get them, you got to make sure you build the building to actually unlock that hero. But I think that heroes are definitely a really strong way. I mean, they give you a lot of victory points, but they also are strong for either defending or attacking.
Obviously, I highly recommend that you get the Order and Chaos expansion for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. Probably the main reason is so you can get to 5 and 6 players. The other reason, though, is because I do kind of think that some of these factions are a little bit better. Like, when we consider the undead slightly a bit more advanced. I wouldn't say, if you were to say, well, I don't have enough money for all of it, so I'll just get none of it. I'd still say you should get Heroes of Land and Sea, the base game. You can play that for a while and then add this in. I would recommend getting them all at the same time. But if you're like, oh, well, that's essential expansion, I'm not going to just get it anyways, don't do that.
The game is great as 4 players, but if you have a big enough game group and you can
Or a big enough table.
Yeah, I mean, you need both, a big game group and a big table, and you can support 5 and 6 players. Like, it's awesome. Plus, like you said, having new factions and new abilities to learn and try and just exploit and expand and
exterminate.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
And explore. I really am on the same page as these guys. I think that, without a doubt, you should definitely pick up Heroes of Landare and see if you haven't already. It's a great game. It was in my top 10 this year. Well done, Scott and Gambling Games. The Order and Chaos expansion is really solid. It's definitely not an essential expansion. It's not like this game isn't complete without it, which is how an expansion should really be, or a base game should be. But if you have more than 4 people in your game group, even if it's not your every week game group, if you think you might play with 5 or 6 people, pick it up. Because even without the 5 and 6 player edition, just the ability to have 4 new races to mix in with the old ones, I really think that's great. Because if you are playing just 4 players, and every single week you're playing the same faction, you're just rotating who gets to play what faction, that's going to get old fast, and this is really going to help you keep the game relevant in your group. I just wish there was a way you could get 7 players at the table.
All right, well, if any of that sounded interesting to you, if you already have the base game and you want to pick up a copy, or if you don't have anything, we're going to have links to both of these for you to purchase in the description box down below.
Either way, you should subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
Sup? No, it's
Sup?
like a question. A question
Sup?
you have the answer to. Sup?
Sup?
Then you do the Forrest Whitaker eye. Community.
I know what it's like having a beard now.
No, you don't. You really don't know what it's like. Where it's like, can I be in your quad? I'm like, no.